In this, our 16th lecture about life lessons from the great books, we continue our exploration of the theme of love. Now, when we talked about Tristan and Isolde, we explored how powerful an emotion love is, and that in the name of love, this gallant knight and his lady fair would justify deception, adultery, lies, all in the higher name of love. Now, it took place in the Never Never Land of medieval romances, in the same way that the story of Alcestis in Euripides and of Medea in Euripides that we examine took place in the distant mythological past. And in each of these, love became the central theme of a mythological tale. But now we turn to Antony and Cleopatra. And that is real history, the story of Antony and Cleopatra. Not a Never Never Land, but the real world of politics at Rome and the struggle for empire. The opportunity to be master of the world, to be absolute master of the greatest superpower the world had ever seen. And to add to its dynamic quality, it became the subject of Shakespeare's tragedy, Antony and Cleopatra. And this most profound student of human nature, Shakespeare, saw not just the drama, but the lesson and character study in the tale of Antony and Cleopatra. It is one of his masterpieces. Produced in 1607 when he was at the height of his creative powers, produced along with Othello and King Lear and Hamlet. But of all these, the most spectacular instance of Shakespeare's creative genius is, I believe, Antony and Cleopatra. Because there, all of his skills as a dramatist were required to take this story, passing over a number of years, high events of history, and to reduce it to a brief performance. Unlike Hamlet or Macbeth, which were historical events that his audience knew very little about and he could make up out of whole cloth, much of his audience knew something about Caesar, about Octavian, about the struggles for empire. But he so mastered the details of this history and wove it together that he gave us an enduring great book, a true masterpiece. Great theme, the struggle for empire, and how one man threw away everything for love. Written in noble language, some of his most beautiful passages occur in the Antony and Cleopatra. And I believe still speaks across the ages. There are people still today who will throw away everything for love. Oh, in the 1930s, the world was astounded when King Edward put aside his crown to marry an American. But the Duchess of Windsor wrote her autobiography and entitled it, "The Heart Has Its Reasons." And so too Antony would tell you that the heart had its reasons. But we need to put in a little bit of the historical context because we can't assume the way Shakespeare did that most of us have studied some Roman history. And the central event began already in 44 BC, March the 15th, 44 BC. For that is when great Julius Caesar was assassinated by Brutus and Cassius. And we have talked about in our course on books that have made history, Shakespeare's handling of Julius Caesar. And when Caesar was assassinated, the conspirators, Brutus and Cassius, simply expected that the whole of the republic would be restored and that the Roman people would welcome their liberty back. But the Roman people did not. They hated the conspirators for what they had done. And Mark Antony, who had been Caesar's consul, sharing the consulship with him in 44 BC, and Caesar's most trusted confidant and one of his best generals, stepped in and began to assemble in his hands all the power that Caesar had once had. And the story of Antony and Cleopatra, as told by Shakespeare, is not just the story of Antony, it is the story of four men, each of whom, in the aftermath of Caesar's assassination, had the opportunity for world power. One was Antony, one was Lepidus, Marcus Aemilius Lepidus. He had held the office of master of the horse, magister equitum, under Caesar. And as Antony had been the sharer of Caesar's power as consul, the master of the horse was second in command in Caesar's role as dictator. So now after the death of Caesar, Lepidus stepped into that position. Unlike the other three men, Lepidus came from a highly distinguished ancient Roman family. And this too was a great asset. He was a very capable general, very good administrator. And he was a real challenge to Mark Antony. The third of these was Sextus Pompeius, the son of the great triumvir of Pompey, who had been defeated at Pharsalus and been killed in Egypt. And he was determined to restore his father's name, master of a mighty fleet, an extremely capable general and admiral. And he too would make his throw for world power. And finally, most surprising of them all, was Gaius Octavius. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, he was studying in Greece. He was on a junior year abroad. He was only 19 years of age. He had spent very little time with Caesar, who was his great uncle. But he received in the mail a letter from his mother. And it said, "Terrible things have happened in Rome. Your uncle, Julius, has been assassinated. And all of Rome is in turmoil. He has left you his entire fortune, billions and billions and billions of dollars. And he has adopted you posthumously. You now have the name of Caesar himself. But I tell you, son, stay in Greece. Get your degree. Do an accounting degree, and that way you can have a job when you come back. But do not come back to Rome itself." And of course it was this young man, we call him Octavian, but Shakespeare all through the play calls him by the name he now had, Caesar. He is now Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. And that young man immediately goes down to the Career Counseling Bureau and asks them, what should I do? In this case, it's an astrologer who plots the horoscope of the young Caesar and falls upon his knees and hails him as master of the world. And the boy of 19 comes back to Rome, using the name of Caesar as a talisman to conjure with, raises up an army of Caesar's veterans, defeats his enemies in battle, and begins to vie for absolute power as well. So these are the four men. And Shakespeare begins his play in 42 BC. After an initial cold period with Antony and even armed struggle, young Caesar has made up with him. And the two of them have combined their forces with Lepidus, left behind in Rome, and Pompey, an outlaw. Young Caesar and Antony have marched upon the conspirators in Greece, and in two separate battles had defeated them at Philippi. And so the young Caesar has fulfilled his vow to avenge his father. But he's a very young man, and Antony is an extremely capable older man, and Antony is disposed to push him aside. But first they must restore order. And Antony takes the far more important task and the far more lucrative task of going out to the Middle East, where he will restore the Roman order, collect taxes, bring under control the various client states and their kings who have tried to break away during this period of civil war, and left the young Octavian there in Rome to handle an economic disaster and to deal with the danger of Pompey, and also to have to vie with the contending aspirations of Lepidus as well. So more than enough to ruin any 21-year-old. Antony goes out, and it is there that our play begins, for he is in Alexandria in Egypt. And already his followers, men like Ahenobarbus, are deeply concerned about our general, Antony, and this dotage of our general that o'erflows the measure. And Ahenobarbus, a real person, will later tell the story to friends of great Caesar, the young man Caesar. Tell the story of how Antony had first met Cleopatra. How she had come to the city of Tarsus in Syria. All the other client kings had been ordered there by Antony that year, but she alone had refused to come. Antony already knew something about her. She had been the mistress of Caesar himself. Caesar had spent a brief period with her one winter, sailed up the Nile with Cleopatra, got a child upon her who was born and named Little Caesar, Caesarion, and then had brought her back to Rome as his mistress, where Antony had first gotten to know her. But now she is back, installed upon the throne of the Ptolemies of Egypt, the throne that comes down through the general Ptolemy, who had been one of the most successful generals of Alexander the Great. And she has refused Antony's order. Barbas remembers and recalls in Shakespeare's lines. Until one day he is dispensing justice in the judicial complex of Tarsus, and he is told that Egypt has arrived, the Queen of Egypt. He goes down. She refuses to come to where he is. She tells him to come down and see her on her royal yacht. And there she is. The curtains are raised up, the purple curtains, and she is lying there on the barge in an oyster shell in the nude. And there are all manners of dramatic lighting, chandeliers coming down with burning lights to create a vision of magic and wonder. And Antony is absolutely taken by her, and she has become his mistress. It is most interesting that Cleopatra in Shakespeare's pages is little more than a cipher, little more than a demanding mistress. Because the real Cleopatra was very different. And Plutarch, who was the principal source for Shakespeare, known in the Elizabethan translation, Plutarch lays out what a powerful vision Cleopatra had in an age when women could not aspire to power. She was not spectacularly beautiful, Plutarch writes, but at every season of her age, she was equally fair. But she had the most brilliant of personalities. She spoke the language of the Egyptians, of the Arabs. She spoke the language of the Greeks, the Macedonian tongue. She spoke Latin absolutely fluently. She knew philosophy, and yet at the same time she could tell the most coarse jokes. And she was an absolute master of manipulating. She had manipulated Caesar, and now she was manipulating Antony. And her vision was that of a new kingdom, a new empire. She believed that Rome was collapsing, that Rome could never rule the Middle East. And she dreamed of a Middle Eastern empire with the Greek language and Greek culture as its fundamental set of values that would rule all the way from Athens to the first cataract of the Nile and all the way out to the land of Iran. And Antony would be its master, and she would be the master of Antony. And she has already begun to work her wiles on Antony when our play begins. He has brought very serious news in the first act. He has brought news that his wife and his brother have broken his agreement with young Caesar and started a civil war in Italy, claiming that they were acting in his name. And they have been defeated. And now he is deeply blamed by the Roman Senate and the young Caesar. He has learned that his forces have been defeated by the Parthians and suffered a terrible blow, and that these Iranians have marched all the way to the gates of Syria. Then he learns that his wife is now dead, who started that civil war. And all of this coming one messenger after another. And he claims that he must return to Rome. He must see how matters stand with young Caesar. He must reassert his authority. And Cleopatra in Shakespeare is this wounded mistress. Oh, you're going back now to see the scarce bearded Caesar? Well, you'll forget me as soon as you're back. Oh, all of these cares of state, they grate upon me, he says. I really want to know only the sum of these matters. I want to stay with you, and he does. He's become that taken by her. But finally he goes back, and the relationship with Caesar is patched up. And the great Shakespeare gives us a magnificent portrait of these three men coming together, the young Caesar, Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus. And already it is clear from the very introduction of Caesar that this is the man who will win. For he allows no emotional ties to bother him. He scarcely seems to even know that women exist. He has one eye, and it is fixed upon power. He does not hate Antony at this stage. He looks upon Antony as a close associate of Caesar. He looks upon Antony as a good general. He looks upon Antony as a man who could restore order to the Middle East and serve a useful function. Lepidus is already clearly the third member, the weakest member. He will have the green sickness, Shakespeare tells us, the indolence, the inability to seize an issue, the inability to truly grasp for power. And the three men patch up their quarrel and agree to turn their forces against the outlaw pirate king, Pompey. And a very sympathetic portrait is painted of this man, Pompey, Sextus Pompeius, seeking to avenge his father who had been defeated by Caesar, seeking to establish his own realm by the sea, a man capable and filled with honor, and that's his mistake. For the four of these great men, Antony, Caesar, Lepidus, and Pompey, come together on his ship off the coast of Misenum. Again, real history. And they agree that Antony will return to the east. Pompey will have the task of clearing the seas of pirates, and in return he will be given Sardinia and Sicily as his realm. Lepidus will continue in his administrative functions and have North Africa as part of his provinces, and that young Caesar will return to Rome. But in the midst of this banquet, one of the pirates, second in command, Minos, to Pompey, whispers in his ear, "All four are on your boat now. Just give me the order, Admiral. I will cut the ropes. They will sail out into the sea, and I will cut the throat of Caesar, Antony, and Lepidus, and you will be sole master of the world." And Pompey says, "I wish you hadn't told me that. Wish you'd just gone ahead and done it. Now it will be dishonorable." We cannot do a dishonorable task. Well, never get into a struggle for power if you're worried about doing something dishonorable, or if you think love is more important than power. So Pompey has already lost his chance, and Lepidus, ever after that meeting, begins to understand how much is involved in the search for power, and he just doesn't have the will for it. Antony goes back to his beloved Cleopatra, but he takes with him a wife. Ah, yes. For as part of their arrangement by which they agree to put aside their past quarrel and to concentrate on bringing order to the Roman Empire, young Caesar has offered the hand of his sister, recently a widow, to Antony, the beautiful and chaste Octavia. She has made her first husband a fine and dutiful wife, and she will make Antony a fine and dutiful wife. And one time, Caesar shows a little bit of emotion in the pages of Shakespeare. "I love my sister. I do not want her treated badly. Do you understand that, my friend, Antony? You must not hurt her with this friend of yours in Egypt." Privately, Antony is called the strumpet's fool, or as Antony will call her, a thrice-turned whore, having had an affair with Pompey, Caesar, now Antony, but this friend of yours. And Antony agrees and goes back. Well, of course, he's terrified about what Cleopatra is going to do. And indeed, she's really mad when he gets there. He has brought this wife, left her in Athens. He's afraid actually to confront Cleopatra in Alexandria with Octavia. And does she give him a very hard time. But he explains it was merely politics. And it's true. She's the one that he absolutely loves. But he has to spend some time in Athens with his wife Octavia. And there it is that in real time, in 36 BC, 4 years after his agreement with Octavian, with young Caesar, he receives word, one, that Caesar, without his permission, has made war upon Pompey and destroyed him. And again, without the permission of Antony, Caesar has removed Lepidus from power, leaving him his life and an enforced leisure that Lepidus is glad to have, to be out of it. So Pompey is dead and gone. Lepidus is out of the way. And without consulting Antony, young Caesar has created this duality of power. Next, it is the turn of young Caesar to be outraged. For word is brought to him, and this all happened, it's true, that Antony has in a formal public ceremony in Alexandria, the capital of Egypt, bestowed upon Cleopatra and her children the whole of the eastern part of the Roman Empire. He has borne 3 children with Cleopatra, 2 twins and a son, and each of them he has given portions of the Roman Empire, Cilicia, Armenia, Syria, and he is named Caesarion. Cleopatra's child by great Caesar, he has named him King of Kings. And he sat there dressed like the god Dionysus, beside Cleopatra dressed as Isis, giving away the Roman Empire. And he goes formally, young Caesar does, before the Roman Senate and says, she has destroyed his mind. The only way we can explain how this once valiant Roman general has become the fool of this strumpet is that she has given him a love potion. Whatever it is, he is deranged and dangerous. And now Shakespeare moves the scene very quickly to the climactic battle of September the 2nd, 31 BC, when young Caesar, leading the forces of Italy and the West and of Rome against this aspiring empire of the East, and Shakespeare makes clear this fundamental division between the Roman values and the values of the Middle East. Whenever Mark Antony turns serious, it is said he just had a Roman thought. That is to say, not indolence, but duty. And young Caesar is the man of duty and destiny, and Antony has become the man of indolence and weakness. So they meet on the northwestern coast of Greece near the town of Actium. And just as in reality, Antony has the far better army. He has veteran troops. They have absolute confidence in their general. They believe they are fighting for the right. They listen to none of these tales about Antony having been captivated by Cleopatra. And they are determined to fight and win on land for their general, for their imperator, for Antony. But Cleopatra, and this really happened, explains to Antony that if he fights a naval battle, he will be showing that he trusts her. It's all dusty and dirty out on the infantry battles. Let's fight a naval battle. But I'll be utterly dependent, he says, upon your ships. Ah, do you not trust me, darling? Of course I trust you. And his close friends go to him and they say, Antony, this is a major mistake, like Enobarbus. You are making a terrible mistake. Trust to your veteran army. And Antony instead listens to Cleopatra. And the naval battle is waged. And again, it is the mastery of Shakespeare to take these scenes, portraying them largely off the stage and just through the characters, witness this titanic struggle for empire and glory. And in the midst of it, we learn, while the very fleet of Antony was winning, Cleopatra turned and fled away, betraying Antony. And the whole of his fleet surrenders there, and Caesar has won. So it is the defeated man, Antony, that rejoins his darling Cleopatra in Alexandria. And even then, he can't be mad at her for very long. And their friends bring them together again. And once again, while Caesar himself marches upon Alexandria, step by step consolidating his power throughout the Middle East, Antony is given over totally to the indulgences of love. In the heyday of their power, they had formed a group called the Society of Wild Livers. And Antony and Cleopatra would give these magnificent banquets where 8 boars, Shakespeare tells us, wild boars, would be roasted for only 12 people. Because it might be that Antony and Cleopatra would say, I'm hungry right now, let's eat. So that boar was ready. And they might say, let's have one drink. And so this one was ready. And they might stay and drink until late in the night before they ate. Then this last bowl was ready. And they would roam the streets while young Caesar was consolidating his power. They would roam the streets in disguises as beggars, knock on people's windows and shout at them and run away. And now, with Caesar marching upon them, they have formed the society of wild dyers. And they pledge themselves to enjoy life as long as they can. But now, so much is he in his dotage that Antony actually believes that he can challenge young Caesar to hand-to-hand combat. And in Shakespeare, as in reality, he sends a challenge to young Caesar saying, let's fight it out man to man. And the mockery with which young Caesar receives this, and the foolishness with which it is treated in Shakespeare, is a full indication of how far Antony has fallen. He still has one more chance. His fleet seems good and strong once again, and he seems to be winning by land around the city of Alexandria. But then at the last moment, his fleet plays him false, and they go over, surrender to young Caesar. And there is Antony, utterly betrayed. Cleopatra is so afraid of his wrath now, how mad Antony is, that she locks herself up in a castle there in Alexandria, awaiting the arrival of Caesar. And Antony, though, can't think of vengeance against her. He can think only of love. But Cleopatra decides to test his love. Young Caesar has not yet arrived in Alexandria, so she sends a messenger explaining that she has killed herself. And Antony receives his message, and he turns to his servant, who really had this name, Eros, love. And he asks his servant, love, Eros, please do me the favor of killing me. I cannot live on without my darling. And Eros, more the warrior than Antony, kills himself rather than kill his master. And Antony says, you showed me what I should have done, and runs himself through with his sword. But have you ever tried to kill yourself with a 2-foot sword? It's very difficult. And Antony does a bad job of it. He botches it. And a messenger suddenly comes in saying, what have you done, Lord Antony? He says, I've killed myself because Cleopatra has killed herself. No, she didn't kill herself. She's a little mad at you. She just wanted to test you. So she had you told that, but she's alive. And so this man who had the chance of world power is carried through the streets of Alexandria, brought up in a basket to Cleopatra. I am dying, Egypt, dying, and dies there in her arms. Well, she mourns him a little bit, but she's got bigger things to do. She's now ready to complete her conquest of men by conquering the young Caesar. When Caesar arrives and learns that Antony is dead, he goes to see Cleopatra. She has dressed herself up to look as though she has mourned, but is still beautiful. But she is still treacherous. And Caesar might be willing to let her live, maybe not even take her back in triumph to Rome. But she offers to divide and give him all of her possessions. And her treasurer is there. And when he is done showing young Caesar all the possessions he's going to get, Caesar says, is that all she has? And the treasurer has to say, no, she's got about half left behind. She just lied to you about it. Cleopatra says, I was going to give gifts to your children and your wife. No, it is too late. You will go back and adorn my triumph. Caesar keeps her closely guarded, but now the end has come. And a clown in Shakespeare, a peasant in Plutarch, but a clown in Shakespeare, always as in Hamlet, the clown who relieves that last moment and shows us that all of life is just a joke, brings in a box of figs with an asp in it, a deadly viper, and Cleopatra presses it to her breast and dies. And the last words belong to Caesar. They are the words of a master of the world, the statesman who, having conquered, is now clement. Antony and Cleopatra shall be buried side by side, and no tomb in the world will be more magnificent than what clasped these two. Bury them like the honored Roman that Antony was. And so they march off stage. Caesar the winner, and Antony who threw it all away for love.